What happens when a comedy legend storms off a talk show stage in a clash that shocks the world? You're about to hear the story of Ben Stiller's explosive exit from Jimmy Kimmel Live, a moment that left the audience stunned and sparked a social media firestorm. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your thoughts on Ben Stiller. Let's get to it. The night began like any other episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. The Hollywood studio was filled with fans eager for celebrity interviews and Kimmel's sharp humor. Ben Stiller, known for his iconic roles in films like Zoolander and Meet the Parents, was the main guest booked to promote his latest project, a satirical comedy series streaming on a major platform. Producers expected Stiller to bring his dry wit and maybe share a few behind-the-scenes stories. Kimmel, a host skilled at blending jokes with conversation, was ready to play off Stiller's comedic energy. The stage was set for a lively segment, one poised to generate viral moments. But backstage, the mood was already off. Stiller arrived at the studio earlier that day, accompanied by a small team. Crew members noticed he seemed tense, less chatty than his usual self. Sources close to the production said Stiller had been dealing with a grueling press tour, compounded by recent media scrutiny over his personal life and comments he'd made about the state of comedy. He was reportedly frustrated with questions that strayed from his work. During the pre-show briefing, Stiller made it clear he wanted to focus on the new series, its themes, and his role as both actor and director. He asked producers to avoid probing into his personal life or past controversies, emphasizing he was there to talk art, not gossip. The team agreed, but some felt uneasy. Kimmel's show often leaned on personal banter for laughs, and Stiller's strict boundaries didn't align with the expected tone. A producer suggested a fun bit about Stiller's comedic influences, which he approved, but the tension was palpable. Meanwhile, Kimmel was prepping in his dressing room. He'd been briefed on Stiller's request to keep things professional, but wasn't overly concerned. Kimmel had hosted Stiller before, landing light jabs that played well with the audience. He planned to start with the series, then toss in a few quips about Stiller's career in comedy. The audience, unaware of any backstage friction, roared as the show went live. Kimmel opened with his monologue, riffing on the day's news with his usual charm. The crowd was electric, primed for the main event. Then came the announcement. Ben Stiller was next. The applause was thunderous. Stiller walked out, offering a quick smile and wave, his demeanor reserved but professional. For a moment, it seemed the earlier strain had lifted. He sat across from Kimmel. The cameras rolled, and the interview began. Kimmel started safely, asking about the new series and its satirical take on modern culture. Stiller relaxed slightly, diving into the show's concept and his directorial approach. His passion was evident, and the audience was hooked, hanging on his words. Kimmel nodded, tossing in a joke about Stiller poking fun at society's quirks. The crowd laughed and Stiller grinned, seeming to go with it. But then Kimmel shifted gears. He asked about a recent tabloid story claiming Stiller had clashed with a co-star over creative differences. It was meant to be a playful probe, but it touched the personal territory Stiller had asked to avoid. His smile faded. He leaned forward, his tone calm but firm, and said he was there to talk about the series, not rumors. The audience chuckled, thinking it was part of the exchange. Kimmel, sensing pushback, pressed on, setting the stage for a heated clash. The studio atmosphere grew tense as Ben Stiller's firm redirection silenced Jimmy Kimmel's tabloid question. Kimmel, quick to recover, smiled and pivoted back to the new comedy series, asking Stiller about the challenges of directing and starring in the same project. Stiller answered, detailing his process of balancing both roles, but his responses were clipped, lacking the earlier enthusiasm. The audience, still engaged, sensed a shift but remained focused. Kimmel, aiming to keep the segment lively, followed up with a question about the series' satirical targets, hoping to recapture the flow. But then he took a risk. He asked Stiller about a recent interview where he'd commented on cancel culture in comedy, suggesting it showed his bold side. It was meant to be a compliment, but it veered into the controversial territory Stiller had asked to avoid. Stiller's demeanor changed. He interrupted Kimmel, his voice steady but sharp, saying he'd asked to focus on the series, not his opinions on hot-button issues. The audience stirred, some laughing nervously, others unsure if it was a planned exchange. Kimmel, picking up on the resistance, tried to pivot again, asking about Stiller's cast, but Stiller wasn't letting it slide. He leaned forward, addressing Kimmel directly. He said he'd come to share his work, not to be baited into culture war debates. The crowd went quiet, absorbing the weight of his words. Producers in the control booth exchanged anxious glances. They'd expected Stiller to roll with Kimmel's style, not challenge it so openly. The segment was veering off course, barely 7 minutes in. Kimmel, now navigating a delicate moment, tried to lighten the mood. He said he was just highlighting Stiller's influence in comedy, which fans appreciated, but the actor wasn't buying it. Stiller spoke about the effort he'd put into the series. The years of honing his craft only to have interviews fixate on divisive topics or gossip. His tone was calm but resolute, and the audience responded, some clapping in support, others sitting in stunned silence. Social media was already buzzing, with early clips of the exchange spreading fast. Viewers debated whether Stiller was setting a fair boundary or being overly defensive. Producers radioed Kimmel's earpiece, urging him to steer the conversation back to the series, but the host was struggling to regain control. Then Kimmel miscalculated. Sensing the segment needed a spark, he asked Stiller about the pressures of staying relevant in Hollywood, specifically mentioning rumors about his recent career choices. It was framed as a chance for Stiller to share his perspective, but it violated his request to avoid personal or speculative topics. Stiller's face tightened. He didn't raise his voice, but spoke with piercing clarity, saying he'd made his boundaries clear and felt disrespected. He told Kimmel the audience deserved better than recycled narratives. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others murmuring in shock. Phones were out recording every word. The control booth was in disarray. Producers debating whether to cut to commercial. Kimmel, visibly rattled, tried to laugh it off, saying he didn't mean to pry, but Stiller was done with deflections, and the clash was about to intensify. The studio was charged as Ben Stiller's pointed accusation of disrespect left Jimmy Kimmel scrambling to respond. The audience, now fully aware of the escalating tension, sat riveted, their phones capturing every moment. Kimmel, trying to steady the segment, offered a quick apology, saying he hadn't meant to cross a line, and asked Stiller to share more about the comedy series' creative process. Stiller complied briefly, discussing the challenges of crafting satire, but his tone was curt. His earlier passion dimmed. The crowd listened, but the focus had shifted to the brewing conflict. Kimmel, sensing the segment was faltering, tried to pivot to a safer topic, asking about Stiller's favorite scene in the series, but Stiller wasn't ready to move past the earlier exchange. Midway through his answer, Stiller paused and looked at Kimmel. He said he needed to address the pattern he was seeing. The host froze, caught off guard. Stiller turned to the audience, his voice steady but intense, and said he'd come to the show to talk about his work, not to be dragged into debates or gossip. He spoke about the years he'd spent building a career, creating stories that connected with people, only to have interviews focus on controversies or personal speculation. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause, some moved by his conviction, others stunned by the raw moment. Producers in the control booth were in a panic, signaling the director to prepare for a commercial break. Social media was exploding with clips of Stiller's speech going viral, sparking debates about whether he was justified or overly sensitive. Kimmel, now on shaky ground, tried to respond. He said he admired Stiller's dedication and was just trying to give fans a broader view of his world. But Stiller cut him off, saying respect meant honoring a guest's boundaries, and he felt Kimmel had ignored his. The accusation was blunt, and the audience gasped, some cheering, others recording the exchange. Kimmel's usual composure wavered. He suggested they focus on the series, but Stiller was already standing, a move that shocked the room. He said he wasn't there to be a prop for someone else's agenda. The crowd roared, split between support and surprise. Producers shouted into headsets, urging a commercial break, but the cameras kept rolling. Stiller unclipped his microphone, his movements deliberate, and addressed the audience one last time, saying they deserved real conversations, not manufactured drama. Then he walked toward the stage exit. Kimmel, stunned, called after him, saying they could stick to the series. But Stiller didn't turn back, disappearing backstage as the director finally cut to commercial. The studio was in upheaval, the audience buzzing with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Backstage, Stiller's team was ready, escorting him toward the exit. The control booth was chaotic, producers debating how to salvage the rest of the show. Kimmel sat alone on set, his confidence shaken as the weight of Stiller's departure settled in. The clash was far from over, and its repercussions were about to unfold. The commercial break did little to calm the electric tension in the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio. The audience, still reeling from Ben Stiller's dramatic walkout, whispered and shared clips on their phones, fueling a social media frenzy. Jimmy Kimmel sat alone on set, the empty chair beside him a stark reminder of the clash. Producers in the control booth scrambled, debating how to move forward. Some pushed for Kimmel to address the incident directly. Others argued for jumping to the next segment to limit the damage. Social media was ablaze with Stiller's exit trending globally. Some praising his stand for authenticity, others calling it an overreaction. The show's team knew the stakes were high and every decision now carried weight. When the show returned, Kimmel faced the crowd. He acknowledged the intensity, saying live television could get heated, but that's what made it unpredictable. He avoided naming Stiller, instead introducing the next guest, a musician booked for a lighter segment. The audience clapped, but their attention was split. Many still posting reactions online. Kimmel pushed through, bantering with the musician, but the segment felt flat. The earlier spark gone. Producers chose to end the show early, cutting a planned comedy bit to wrap up. The move was practical. The night's energy was drained, and the focus was now on managing the fallout. Backstage, Stiller was already leaving the studio. His team waiting at the exit followed as he headed to a waiting car. A few crew members lingered, one offering an apology, but Stiller brushed it off, saying he wasn't upset, just done with being misrepresented. He left without further comment. Paparazzi, alerted by the viral clips, swarmed the studio's exit, snapping photos as his car pulled away. The images hit entertainment sites within minutes, paired with headlines about Stiller's bold departure. Some outlets hailed his principles. Others painted him as overly sensitive. Stiller's team stayed quiet, focusing on promoting his comedy series to steer the narrative back to his work. Kimmel's team was in crisis mode. Producers reviewed footage, assessing the impact on the show's image. Kimmel had built a reputation on relatability, but his persistence with personal and controversial questions was now being criticized as tone-deaf. The host met with his staff after the show, visibly shaken. Sources said he felt Stiller had overreacted, but admitted his approach may have misjudged the actor's boundaries. The team considered a public statement, but opted to monitor the response first, hoping the story would lose steam. By the next morning, the incident dominated entertainment news. Pundits dissected every moment, some siding with Stiller for demanding respect, others defending Kimmel for sticking to his comedic roots. The clips continued to spread, amassing millions of views. The fallout reached beyond the studio. Stiller's fans rallied online, praising his commitment to his craft over sensationalism. His comedy series saw a surge in streaming numbers, with some linking it to the renewed spotlight on his work. Critics, including rival talk show hosts, took shots, suggesting Stiller couldn't handle a little teasing. The incident became a lightning rod, raising questions about the balance between entertainment and respect in celebrity interviews. Kimmel's show faced scrutiny, with viewers debating whether the format needed to evolve. The night was over, but the consequences were still unfolding, setting the stage for a broader reckoning. The controversy surrounding Ben Stiller's walkout from Jimmy Kimmel Live continued to grip public attention, cementing the incident as a media firestorm. Kimmel's team worked to contain the fallout, but the story showed no signs of fading. Producers held urgent meetings analyzing the viral clips that had now amassed tens of millions of views. Some saw the buzz as a chance to boost ratings. Others worried about lasting damage to the show's reputation. Kimmel, usually quick to rebound, was unsettled. Sources said he privately questioned whether he'd misread Stiller's boundaries, though he maintained his questions were standard for a talk show. The team planned the next episodes carefully, opting for low-risk guests to shift focus, but the shadow of Stiller's exit remained. Online, the debate intensified. Stiller's supporters flooded social media, calling him a principled artist who'd stood up to sensationalism. Fan accounts shared quotes from his onstage speech praising his defense of his craft. The comedy series he was promoting saw a significant spike in viewership, with streaming platforms reporting record engagement. Some attributed the surge to the controversy, as curious viewers tuned in to support Stiller's work. Critics, however, were less sympathetic. Entertainment blogs and rival hosts suggested Stiller's reaction was overblown, accusing him of dodging legitimate questions about his career. The polarized reactions fueled a broader conversation about celebrity interviews, with some arguing hosts needed to respect boundaries, others insisting stars should expect personal probes. Stiller stayed out of the public eye, skipping planned promotional events. Sources close to him said he was unfazed by the criticism, but frustrated that the media focused on the clash rather than his series. His team leaned into the show's buzz, releasing new promotional content that highlighted its satirical edge, which helped steer some coverage back to his work. Paparazzi hounded his movements, with photos of him at a private event sparking fresh rumors. The attention only amplified the incident's reach, with news outlets dissecting every angle, from Stiller's body language to Kimmel's tone. The story became a case study featured in entertainment podcasts and industry panels, debating the dynamics of talk show interviews. Kimmel's show felt immediate effects. The controversy drove a ratings bump, but some advertisers voiced concerns about the negative publicity. Producers tightened their pre-show protocols, ensuring clearer communication with guests about sensitive topics. Kimmel's subsequent episodes avoided high-risk interviews, focusing on safer segments to rebuild momentum. Social media continued to churn with memes and reaction videos, keeping the incident alive. Stiller's walkout wasn't just a moment. It was a cultural touchstone, exposing tensions between celebrity autonomy and media expectations. The final chapter of the fallout was still unfolding, with both sides bracing for its lasting impact. Ben Stiller's walkout from Jimmy Kimmel Live solidified its place as a cultural lightning rod, its impact resonating long after the initial clash. Kimmel's team sought to move past the controversy, issuing a final statement that reaffirmed the show's commitment to entertaining while valuing guests. It avoided mentioning Stiller, a calculated move to let the story fade. Kimmel addressed the incident in a later monologue, keeping it brief and humorous. He joked he'd learned some comedians take their satire more seriously than his questions, earning laughs from the audience. He wished Stiller well, but offered no apology, signaling the show was ready to turn the page. The crowd's response was warm, but online debates continued, with fans and critics dissecting Kimmel's approach. Stiller maintained a low profile, avoiding public statements and social media. Sources said he was unbothered by the scrutiny, but disappointed the media hadn't focused more on his series. His team capitalized on the show's success, securing high-profile interviews that steered clear of personal topics. The strategy worked. The comedy series topped streaming charts, with critics praising its sharp wit and earning early award buzz. Stiller's fans remained steadfast, flooding platforms with support, hailing him as an artist who prioritized craft over gossip. Critics, however, kept the pressure on, with some entertainment shows suggesting his exit was a publicity stunt. The divide underscored the incident's polarizing nature, keeping it alive in public discourse. The clash left lasting marks on both sides. For Kimmel, it was a rare misstep in a career built on deftly handling celebrity interviews. Some viewers praised his composure. Others felt his persistence with controversial questions showed a lack of sensitivity. The show's ratings stabilized, but the episode became a reference for navigating high-profile guests. Producers implemented stricter guidelines, ensuring guests' boundaries were clearly understood. For Stiller, the walkout was both a challenge and a victory. His stand boosted his series' profile, driving record viewership and critical acclaim. Detractors used the moment to label him as overly defensive, but the success of his work overshadowed the criticism. His team focused on future projects, choosing platforms that aligned with his artistic vision. The incident sparked broader discussions about the state of talk shows. Industry analysts debated whether hosts needed to prioritize substance over sensationalism, especially with guests who set clear boundaries. Others argued celebrities like Stiller should expect personal jabs as part of the format. The clash became a case study, cited in media studies and entertainment columns, exploring the evolving dynamic between stars and hosts. Kimmel's show invited Stiller back, but his team declined, opting for venues that respected his focus on work. The controversy eventually faded from headlines, but its lessons lingered, shaping how both sides approached the media landscape. The story of that night remains a vivid snapshot of clashing expectations. Stiller's exit was more than a moment of defiance. It was a demand for respect in an industry driven by headlines. Kimmel, caught off guard, faced the limits of his approach in a changing media world. That's the story. What did you think? Drop a comment below and let me know.